A pool hall diagnosis. Now, if you've never heard of Dr. Walton Forrest Dutton, it's no great failing on your part, though the man himself might have disagreed with you on that point. He hailed originally from Ohio, drifted down to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where he made himself a name of considerable weight, authoring 7 books and a considerable stack of medical papers on ailments and their treatments. He pioneered intravenous feeding, which is a fancy way of saying he figured out how to pour nourishment into a person who couldn't be troubled to eat in the conventional fashion, and he was regarded nationally as an authority on several branches of medicine. By 1965, however, all of that distinction had settled itself quietly into a small-town doctor's office in the southwest Missouri Ozarks, in the village of Knoll, where the doctor, well into his 80s, served as the sole general practitioner for miles in every direction. His office occupied a 2-story house on Main Street, 1 block shy of the railroad tracks that bisected the downtown into 2 tolerably equal halves. Main Street in those days was a lively stretch of commerce, with hardware stores and groceries and 5-and-dime establishments pressed shoulder to shoulder along both sides, each one offering something a person might find a use for. Entertainment, too, was available for the discerning citizen. You could watch a picture show at the Ozark Movie Theater, or take a dip in the Elk River, or, if your tastes ran in a somewhat less wholesome direction, descend into the pool hall in the basement below the street. The pool hall announced itself to the world by means of a painted arrow pointing downward with the single word "pool" lettered on it. A person who chose to follow that arrow would pass through a narrow doorway and down a flight of concrete steps into a subterranean establishment that offered 2 pool tables, 2 billiard tables, a table and chairs where domino players convened, and a bar with 5 or 6 stools. Pool and billiard players parted with 10 cents per game for the privilege, though a good many of the regulars weren't there to play anything at all. They were there for the beer and the conversation, those 2 staples of human civilization that have never yet been improved upon. On one sweltering July afternoon, the usual sounds of that underground society were proceeding in their customary fashion. Men talked and laughed. Billiard balls struck one another with sharp little reports. Beer mugs came down on the bar top with a satisfying thud. It was a scene of comfortable disorder, familiar and untroubling, until a new sound arrived at the top of the concrete stairway and made its way downward with considerable urgency. What followed the sound was a man, a solitary male human being who arrived at the bottom of the stairs without having used his feet for the purpose. He spilled onto the floor and lay there in a state of perfect stillness, his clothing soiled, his appearance disheveled, and his odor such that even the pool hall, which had no special reputation for fastidiousness, found him remarkable. The crowd gathered around him with the speed that a fallen body always seems to generate in public places. Men bent at the waist and peered down at the motionless figure. Dark red blood had begun to seep from his head and spread slowly across the floor in a manner that concentrated the attention wonderfully. Questions arose from the assembled company that were rhetorical in character and unanswerable in practice. "Who is he?" someone wanted to know. "Is he all right?" asked another. "Is he dead?" inquired a third, which was perhaps the most relevant inquiry of the 3. It was somewhere in the middle of this community assessment that somebody noticed Dr. Dutton's conspicuous absence from the proceedings. The doctor was not among those crowding around the fallen man. He wasn't craning his neck or offering opinions. He was, in point of fact, sitting on his usual stool at the bar with a paper cup of beer, attending to it in his customary unhurried way. The doctor had strong opinions about drinking vessels. He maintained that a paper cup allowed for a much clearer inspection of any prior contamination than glass did, and he was known to have discovered bright red lipstick residue on the lip of a glass mug on at least one prior occasion, which had confirmed him in this view. Les, who served simultaneously as the pool hall's proprietor, its bartender, and its expert in the arrangement of billiard balls prior to the commencement of play, looked over at the doctor and put the situation to him plainly. "Hey, Doc," he said, "you want to take a look at this guy?" A look of mild inconvenience passed over the doctor's face. He sat with it for a moment, then lifted himself slowly from the stool. He took a step or 2 in the direction of the fallen man, stopped, reconsidered, stepped back to the bar, retrieved his paper cup of beer, and then set off again at a pace that could most charitably be described as leisurely. A cigar of his favorite brand protruded from his mouth as he walked, which was its natural and habitual position. The doctor was a man of fierce dedication to his cigars, and it was widely circulated as a matter of local legend that he held a Ripley's Believe It or Not record for the greatest number smoked in a single day, though nobody had ever been moved to verify this claim. When the doctor reached the gathered men, he shouldered a few of them aside and leaned over the body. He took a sip from the paper cup. He reached down with his free hand, took the fallen man by the hair, and lifted his head from the floor. He was preparing to conduct a tongue evaluation, which was a medically accepted diagnostic procedure and one the doctor had presumably performed with success many times over his long career. "Stick out your tongue," the doctor said. The man offered no response. It was possible he was hard of hearing. It was equally possible he didn't speak English. It was also possible he was dead, which was a hypothesis that had already been floated by the crowd. The doctor, however, was a trained physician, and he wasn't the sort to abandon a diagnosis on account of one uncooperative patient. He held the man's head aloft, took another measured sip of beer, and tried once more. "I said stick out your damn tongue," he said, in a tone that suggested he'd given the matter all the patience it deserved, and rather more than it had earned. The man's tongue remained where it was, which is to say inside his head, and the rest of him remained equally still. The doctor lowered the head back to the floor with the air of a man who had completed a job to his own satisfaction. "That son of a gun is dead," he announced. He took a final sip of beer and made his unhurried way back across the pool hall to his stool, where he resumed his prior occupation. The local funeral home was summoned to collect the deceased. The poor fellow's name was never discovered. He was buried as John Doe, and the general belief was that he'd hopped off one of the trains that passed slowly through downtown Knoll, and that whatever had ailed him had overtaken him somewhere between the top of those concrete steps and the bottom. Dr. Dutton served the people of that small Ozark community for 25 years, and they respected him for it. In his latter days, he was, in all the ways that counted, a rural small-town doctor, whatever else he might once have been. He was remembered fondly for his unhurried manner, his unshakable self-possession, and the quality he had, better than most, of making a person feel they were in capable hands. He passed away in 1971 at the age of 94, leaving behind a wife named Zelda, 3 daughters, a son, and a town full of people who'd sorely miss him and his many peculiarities.